Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us for day 2 at the Human Advantage. We are on our way to understanding the impact that AI is already having on businesses. And no better place to start than with our next guest, Elaine Rodrigo. Elaine is the Chief Insights and Analytics Officer at Reckitt. Elaine started her career in the market research industry and has since gained over 20 years of experience in the fast-moving consumer goods industry with roles at Mondelez, Danone, and now back at Reckitt. Elaine is passionate about aligning human insights with brand purpose for positive impacts on both business and society. And joining me for today's session is Patrick Young. Patrick is based in the BVA London office with me, where he leads the UK business for PRS and Vivo, BVA's packaging, new product development, and shopper team of expert qualitative and quantitative researchers. Patrick has over 15 years of experience leading insight studies and workshops for global brands. And I guess, guys, the thing that we all have in common is that we all spent a significant portion of our careers in Singapore, Elaine's hometown, but a place that Patrick and I have both spent some time in the insights industry. So great to have you both. And thanks for joining us at the Human Advantage, Elaine.
Thank you. Thanks for having me today.
Great stuff. Thanks, Elaine. So I guess let's get started by just talking a little bit about how you've seen the insights industry evolve. What are some of the developments that have really, in your eyes, transformed the industry?
Yeah, so I've been in this industry now for like 26 years and counting. But if I look back to the last 8 to 10 years, and what are some of almost the big inflection points, isn't it? That's transformed our industry. And a lot of this is not going to be new to both of you or the people listening in today. But if I was sort of get into it, I think there was this period of digitization. So let's say maybe 8 to 10 years ago, we all remember this when, there was the big news around digital, obviously from a marketing perspective. But even within the research industry, the advent of new players, new suppliers, platforms that were much more sort of tech-driven, you might remember, right? When we started to be able to become much more agile, things that used to take us 4 weeks, for example, to do a piece of research on, now was taking days or even hours. So that was the advent of almost the DIY platforms, as we called them back then. You became basically much faster, more agile, and it was a lot cheaper. But what was interesting is what started as kind of cheap and fast then became also about better quality. So it wasn't just kind of the cheap version of it, but actually you could get a better outcome. So that was the first area, right? Digitization of our industry. And then something that was, to be honest, it's always there, but it's really just, I guess, taken real speed over the last 5 years is the area of data. And obviously, we are in the research industry. We've always dealt with data. But it's different types of data, right? We were, sort of more used to dealing with the customized kind of data like qualitative insights or let's say survey data. And this kind of advent of digital data search, social listening, ratings and reviews, and multiple sources of data even within organizations. So that, I think, over the last 5 years has really step changed. So the whole area of analytics, for example, you've seen, has kind of moved forward and made a lot of progress. And if you look at some of the recent reports that were published by SOMA and MRS, you actually see that budgets, for example, and resources are shifting towards the area of data and analytics over the last 3 years. So that's the second piece, right? So if you look at those two areas, though, that were huge areas of change in our industry, to be honest, I think how the industry, how agencies, the suppliers, or clients have evolved in this space is you have the kind of the winners and the losers. To some extent, it's all about how you've embraced it. The ones, I think, who've said, we know analytics, we know data, and more importantly, we know how to tell a good story. We know how to actually humanize all this for insights. These are the ones who you see have actually made progress in terms of leading the way, right? And the ones, unfortunately, who haven't and still kind of rely on the past or thinking a little bit more around, we still have to do it, things maybe the traditional way, may not have made as much progress. Yep, so those are kind of two big areas. But I wanted to say that actually all this sounds sort of very, very data-driven, which is a good thing. But you might be thinking, what about the human side of things? Have we lost some of that human insight, right? Which is just, honestly, that's what we do. And people ask me, how have things changed in our industry? And I say, what hasn't changed is our job is to actually put the consumer at the center of everything, and consumers are human beings. So on the human side, I think firstly, data and digital has enabled us to become more human. It depends on how you use it. On the one hand, digital data and other types of data, it's behavioral, right? It's what people actually do. It's what they've actually said. So we don't have the age-old conundrum of what they claim versus what they do. On the other hand, and this will be very close to heart for you, the whole area of behavioral science, I think, has just really, it's always been there, but it's sort of gotten a little bit more mainstream, let's say, or popular over the last few years in a good way. Because the area of behavioral science, I think, has allowed us to become insightful about human beings and people in a much more precise way, right? Understanding specific barriers and motivators and zooming in on that one behavior change that you need to drive in order to drive some kind of, change in behavior amongst consumers as to achieve category growth or your objectives. And in the case of Reckitt, for all our brands, we want to identify that one behavior change that will drive both growth for the organization and positive societal impact on our sustainable development goals and our brand fight, right? So again, data, digitization, still remaining more human. And obviously the big thing at the moment that we're all talking about is AI, but I'll leave that for a discussion later on today.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think some really interesting points. And I think what I've found is that, as you say, the multiple increases in data sources, I think behavioral science gives you a language to talk about those and how to bring together primary or secondary, qualitative, quantitative into a single meaning. You talk about agility, talk about data, talk about tools, and that almost naturally leads us to the topic of AI. And as you know, at day 2 at the Human Advantage Conference, that's very much the focus for us. So I guess building on that and looking to the future, where do you see the opportunities for AI within the research industry?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely huge. And I think it's already been happening, right? Actually, so myself personally, I've been spending at least 50% of my time on this topic over the last year. And there was a period when it was 70% when I was having to train models. And really, I mean, let's start off with how AI is even disrupting the world of business. And let's start with marketing. I guess maybe most of the audience today might be more from the marketing or insight space, right? If you look at a recent study by BCG of CMOs that was launched in June this year, they surveyed all these CMOs, and 80% of the CMOs spoke about how they've been utilizing Gen AI. But it's interesting where they thought, it's like they said, so 80% of them are using it versus a year ago when people talked about they might use it, 80% are saying they are. That's really high if you think about it in adoption, yeah? Think about everything that we've done in the past. Usually after about 9 to 12 months, you expect usually about a third to say that, usually it's like a third have started, a third are watching, and a third are just kind of like at the end, generally, when you have any big transformation. And this is 80%. But what they're using it for is interesting versus what they thought they would use it for. So they said that at the beginning, everybody thought that you would use Gen AI for personalization. So that journey, I was talking about the end-to-end journey and touch points and so on, right? Everybody thought you would go for that. And then the other area is we thought that we would use it for content creation and asset creation in the creative space. What's happened is the personalization area has turned out to be a lot harder than everybody expected. And it's largely because of the data. Because the data is kind of not really packaged up in an easy, consistent way to access. So personalization hasn't really happened so much using Gen AI. But the area that's really completely taken off is the area of content and asset creation. So for advertising, whether it's TV or digital, etc., right? That area and social media management is the area that everybody has pretty much gone for, including in Reckitt as well. So, almost like the downstream part of the communications funnel, really, and starting there first. At the same time, the CMOs say that the 3 areas that they believe are opportunities for the application of Gen AI, but they haven't really cracked it, but they desire to. So personalization was one of them, as I mentioned. But the other 2 are about insights generation and predictive analytics. Now, that is completely in our space. So if you ask me, what is our role? I say lead. I mean, this is the area that hasn't been cracked yet. This is what we do. We do insights, we do analytics. So we should be leaning in and to some extent almost not waiting for the CMO, but how do we actually go forward and lead the way and propose and say this is what we should do? And within Reckitt, I think in my case, I'm fortunate to have a very forward-thinking CMO who I work for, but at the same time, a CMO who actually also understands, and an organization that understands the power of insights. And thirdly, a CMO and I guess an executive committee, an organization that trusts the I&A function and myself to actually lead from the front on the topic of Gen AI. So I think, so first and foremost, there's a lot of opportunity. I should also say at this point, though, that, and I think a number of people around the room will already know this, it's not like we haven't been using AI already in this industry. Just want to say it's Gen AI and large language models that have really kind of grown in conversation and usage over the last year and a half. But a lot of the tools that we have already have AI, traditional AI, and machine learning baked into it. So, all social listening, for example, all of that is AI powered. The knowledge management systems we use, whether it's Travito or, the other ones, they're all AI powered as well. A lot of the tech platforms that are used by the big research companies, all medium-sized ones, are all AI driven as well. The demand spaces methodology, which we have in-house within Reckitt called demand-centric growth, has 8 machine learning algorithms within it, which we run on our own. 3 to prep the data and 5 to run the demand trees. And my data analytics team, we run that on ourselves. So I guess what I'm saying is, number one, we're not starting from zero. I don't know if we realize how much we already know. But we actually, so first, we know all that. The other thing we have is, as we looked at AI, we kind of chunked it up. And there was this study as well by, I think it was also BCG, that said the success of the embedding of AI in an organization is 10% the technology, because the whole point of Gen AI is it's open. Everybody has it. Yeah. So there's actually no competitive advantage, or little competitive advantage in the tech itself. It's how you kind of piece it together. So 10% technology, 20% from the data that is actually used to fuel and train the models, and 70% from the change management of embedding Gen AI within your business operating model and how you actually use it. So if you look at this, first and foremost, who is the custodian of the data within the organization? Who has a lot of data in consistent ways? Our function. So when we started this journey, actually, we started with what is going to be the competitive advantage for our organization? And we were like, where do we have the data? And immediately all eyes were on insights and analytics, because for the last 4 to 5 years, we've built up this huge proprietary data sets of a whole bunch of things, right? Like demand spaces, because we've internalized it. We're now covering 70-80% of the revenue of the company. I have in excess of 500 million consumer data points in one database, completely consistent and set up for machine learning. It's like a gold mine to train the models. We have 15 years of Reckitt market research reports of everything we've done in one place in our Stravito database. That becomes another huge source of data. We do our brand health tracking in one consistent way. That's another source of data. We do behavior change, right, in a consistent way for all our brands. That was a huge input as well into the model around how you drive behavior change, and then think about everything else, right? Innovation, we've been doing it with one agency for 20 over years, all our comms testing as well. So all of a sudden, separately I was kind of saying to my marketing counterparts, I said, so now you understand why sometimes I'm slightly draconian about wanting to do things in a consistent way, right? It's because now you see why. But it wasn't just about consistency, about, yes, there's comparability, but I was trying to build these data sets because at some point, I just felt like at some point, data would be a currency, and now it is. Yep. So coming back to that again, I think just to summarize, huge opportunity in marketing. In Reckitt, actually, marketing is leading the way on our Gen AI journey for the whole company. We started end of last year. We've run pilots, and now we're embedding across organizations. Number one. Number two, insights and analytics, CMI, our industry has a huge role to play because we have data, because we have the skill sets, because this is the way you actually make everything about consumer centricity. So we have a huge role to play as well in what we do in terms of, I guess, embedding and leveraging Gen AI to step change what we do.
It's really exciting to hear how much you're embracing AI. And I think that stat you say, the 80% shift from looking to use it to now using it is sort of reflective of, as you say, the industry overall. I suppose in terms of having set up these these models, and you talked about the different AI platforms that you have internally. What are some of the experimentation that you and your team have been doing at Reckitt? So can you talk a little bit about more specifically, maybe?
Sure. And just actually last month, we were sort of 1 year, I would say, for the INA team, my INA team, thinking about what we want to do with AI. So we did a check-in. We reviewed and said, what have we experimented with and what has worked, what hasn't worked, and what do we actually want to scale, right? So the way that we embarked on the journey was in twofold. There was what I did within my insights and analytics team, and then there's what I did as a part of the wider marketing transformation. So actually, our journey within INA started in June of 2023. So I take us back more than, kind of 14 months. I was getting a global INA summit together. But the AI thing was kind of bubbling, but you remember, but kind of nobody really knew what we'd do. So I had my kind of top 50 people together and we ran a little dragon's den. We thought, let's invite a bunch of people. So we invited in 6 suppliers, 3 of which were our existing partners. So the kind of more, I guess, well-known, usual kind of agencies. And 3 we'd never heard of before and worked with before. Startups, right? To see and we had them come in and present to us. And it was a dragon's den. So we broke up our teams and all that. And they would pitch ideas. And then the 3 of them won and they got money to go and experiment. Yeah. But they had to actually present back. So what we did, I guess this was in 2 months ago, was we reviewed all of that and said what worked and what. A few interesting insights on that. The most exciting things that we saw came from the startups. Of course, yeah, it was like, wow, hadn't seen before and all that. 1 year, the big agencies brought interesting things, but they were a little bit closer in, let's say. So we did some of those anyway, because we're like, why wouldn't we? We already do all of this kind of testing with this company. Now it's got an AI lens to it. Yeah, let's go for it. We did it, right? And then we tried out a couple of startups as well. 1 year down, the interesting thing is the ones with the startups, we learned something, but it didn't work out because it was too new. It was hard to scale, but we learned something from it. And interestingly, it was the agencies where we've just scaled it up. Why? Because they have scale. So even if it's not as out there, but they had the scale and the capability for us to bring it everywhere. Yeah. So that was kind of one interesting insight from our Dragon's Den. So that's what we did within INA. But the truly exciting thing that we did was actually the journey that I've been on within our marketing community, where we started this journey in Q4 of last year. And as a marketing leadership team of the organization, the CMO team, my 3 colleagues, so my colleague in charge of marketing capabilities, my colleague in charge of media and digital capabilities, and myself, insights and analytics capabilities, together with our boss, the CMO, we scoped out and we said, where do we start? And we started with, where are the business use cases within this organization where we already have momentum and where we think Gen AI will bring us a competitive advantage? So we started from there. And then after that, we looked at where do we actually have data to drive it? Where do we have a competitive advantage from data, primarily where it's proprietary? And that's where INA came up. After that, we looked at that. I mean, there are really 3 ways if you look at organizations about how Gen AI is utilized, right? I mean, we kind of went through it. And there are 3 buckets of them. The first one is for productivity. This everybody knows. It's like using Copilot to help you with your meeting minutes, yeah, or organizing your calendar. It's like a assistant. So that was one. The second one is what we call domain reinvention, which is looking at your capabilities today, whether marketing or whatever, and saying, how can you do it better? And then the third one is actually a new business model invention, where, for example, like what L'Oreal has done. So using Gen AI to almost create new business opportunities. So we decided to go for domain reinvention, which is what do we already probably do well in marketing today, and we have some competitive advantage. How do we literally step change those, take it to the next level and scale it? Yeah. And in the area of domain reinvention of marketing, we embarked on a journey in 3 areas. One around automation for productivity. So we tackled the area of media. And, there's so much data in there, right? How do we actually create a tool that helps people, like a chat GPT style, kind of interface where our media team, our brand team can go in and actually ask questions that will pull together all the data from media and provide recommendations. Yeah. And on that one, so that was the first one. The second pillar was really around communications. It was the low-hanging fruit, the thing I mentioned that 80% of CMOs went for, including ours, which was actually on how do you become more efficient on the asset creation part. So we looked at adaptation and localization. We decided in creativity not to go for origination, coming up with an original idea, because that's where you need a lot of human intelligence and a lot of human creativity. And we feel we're not there yet, right? We went for the end of the value chain, and we went for after an ad, after the idea has already been created, how do you actually adapt it? How do you localize it? And the third pillar is the one that I lead, and it's actually in the end sort of turned out to almost be like, as my boss calls it, the star work stream, because it's super interesting, which is actually an idea creation. It's an idea creation tool, which actually originates from insights generation. So there are two parts to it. There's an insights generation tool. Try to imagine a chat GPT style. So it's like chat GPT. You can go in and ask any question about any insight you want, but it's fueled by all our proprietary data sets. What I mentioned before, the 500 million consumer data points on 12 different categories across 17 markets. The last 15 years of all market research ever done in Reckitt, right? In one place. The brand health tracking, the market share database, the behavior change work, everything we've done on societal impact, sustainability, everything we've done on product superiority, innovation, all our comms testing, try to imagine all of that. You can go and ask any question you want, and it's incredible. In seconds, it comes up with everything, right? And then from that insights generation tool, when you finally find the insight around your audience, so you can target by your target audience, you can target by your demand space as well. You click on that insights and you go to the idea generation tool and you develop concepts. So the final output of the idea generation tool is a concept board, exactly like how it looks to go into a quantitative concept test with the title, inside, introduction, RTBs, price, size, and visual, right? And to go straight in, and you can develop that one in. A marketer has been able to develop one in under an hour, essentially. And then it goes straight into the testing. So super exciting. Across these three, we had specific KPIs and metrics. We started the pilots in December. They went for 3 months. They were finished in March. And happy to say that, so we set very clear metrics. Those who know Reckitt know that we're very action-oriented and numbers-oriented organization. Very clear metrics. Important to say the metrics were not just on efficiency. Everybody's going for efficiency. You will get efficiency. But we put metrics on quality, where we say that the quality, basically the AI-enabled human, right, has to be as good as the human alone. So you become more efficient, but the quality is as good at. But over time, we expect the quality to exceed that of the human alone. I mean, that's the whole point about Gen AI, is to empower human beings to be better versions of themselves. And that's the way we see it. And we have seen more than 60% efficiency. Yeah, more than 60% efficiency in terms of humans and what they're able to accomplish. While at the same time, already with the first iteration of the prototypes for all three work streams, we were able to actually come up with concepts or content or media reports that were as good as before. And and we've tested them. So, for example, with the creative assets, we use link testing, and we use exactly the same tests. So the test is exactly the same, and we see that actually it's scoring as good as the human only. So we run them side by side, and in some cases a little better. For the innovation, for example, in this case we use bases for this particular category. Same thing. The concepts that were developed in 30 to 60 minutes are scoring as good as, if not a little bit better in one or two places, than those that used to take 2 months to develop. So, overall, if we look at what we've done, we can say that we came to a conclusion the pilots were a success. We built a business case, sold it into the executive committee, everybody got really excited. The top leaders of the organization are very excited about it. And now in the process of rolling that out, we're scaling it across markets and we are scaling it across categories. And as I said, insights and analytics right at the forefront. Firstly, all require data. And secondly, there's one particular work stream, as I said, on insights and idea creation that is led by me and my team. And as I told the ExCo and the senior leadership team at our conference in March, I feel like with Gen AI and what we're doing now, I feel like after 26 years, I might actually finally accomplish my dream, which is that every single idea that comes from this company will start with an insight and will actually have the consumers at the heart of what we do, because that's how I'm training the models to do exactly that, and that's what marketers are going to use.
That's fascinating, and thank you for taking us through quite some extensive use cases. And I think it's great to hear the sort of excitement from yourself, but also across Reckitt about the uses of AI. I guess on the flip side of that is where are the watch outs? Where would you be more cautious about using AI, or where's the opportunity for more of a human approach?
Yeah, so I think, so a few watch outs. I think the number one watch out is that it's not a silver bullet. Yeah, so it's not like I push a button and I get an insight. I get an idea. I mean, most of the people on this call have probably at some point used ChatGPT. Think about it. It doesn't give you an answer the first question with the first prompt, does it? Right? You've got to prompt it more. The better you prompt it, the better you write your user prompts, the better the answers. You got to train it. Depends on what data it's fed with. So I think the number one thing is embrace Gen AI, but don't think that it's a silver bullet. The other watch out is I see what companies are doing is that senior leaders are getting very excited about it, saying, well, this is just going to really step change everything. But then they reorganize. They want to sort of say, look, we don't need all these people doing this. AI is going to do it, or they become more ambitious. Now everybody's going to become 60% more efficient with the AI. But actually no AI has even been developed yet. It's like a thought, right? So what we did, I think, was the right way, which is there's an ambition that our people will become more efficient, which means, and the whole idea is, but for what purpose? Is we said we want the AI to empower marketers to become more creative and innovative. The problem is that marketers today, they're spending 30 to 50% of their time doing grunt work. They're doing, we did a mapping analysis to understand what people are spending their time on. And we found 300 tasks, and 30 to 50% of the time of a marketer is spent doing all this analysis. They call it business reporting, planning, forecasting. So, but they're only spending like 15 to 20% of their time on creativity and innovation, which honestly is the reason they got into marketing in the first place. And we also, apart from understanding actually what they do, this was my addition to the questionnaire, which I stand by and I think it's great, is actually I asked them what they enjoy working on. Because the last thing on earth you want to do is have Gen AI take away the things that people actually enjoy doing. So I think the watch out, in this case, to turn it around is try to understand where Gen AI can actually empower and enable human beings. In this case, we said, these are the tasks which honestly Gen AI is good at. And it's not really value adding from a business perspective and people don't like doing. Perfect. Let's go for these ones first. And then it's going to free up the time of people to do creativity, to do innovation. That's better for the organization and it's better for people, right? So you get a more motivated workforce, you get a more empowered workforce, you get better marketers. So I think that's, a couple of the watch outs, as I said, not a silver bullet. And think about how it actually enables humans. And on that, I'll say a third one, which we found really important as well, is a human in the loop. And not to forget where the places, and once again, because it's not a silver bullet, there's a very important role that the human has to actually play. In all three work streams, the human played a key role. The AI and the machine enabled them to become better. But when it was machine alone, it wasn't that great. I'll give you one example, which was the creative one, right? The first iteration that came out of the Gen AI tool actually didn't actually do better in the link test because the voice and tonality was flat. It's interesting because as of today, you also know what the AI is good at and what it isn't. Tonality, sentiment, emotions, it's not so good at yet. Now, it's evolving so quickly, at some point it's going to become better, all right? But as of today and what we had at that stage, it didn't. However, we had the human in the loop. We had the creative person who used the tools, adjusted it, and then all of a sudden it became much more emotional. It got the right tonality. We put it back into the test again. The great thing is these days all the tests are all AI driven. So as I put it back in the test, it's literally get a result, person fixes it, write in again, AI driven, comes out. Yeah, it's very fast. And the next iteration came back, voila, we got it. It's actually now better. So that role of the human in the loop is really important. Remember, 70% of the success is going to come from people, from change management, 10% from the technology. Yes, so let's remember the key role that human beings will play in the success of embedding AI within an organization.
Are there any final thoughts or advice or messages you'd share to the people listening in, be it in the marketing or the insights industries, or even just passionate about behavioral science and AI?
Yeah, I think both of them. I mean, behavioral science is like, I'm like preaching to the choir, but, always I've been a convert anyway. So I'll say even in this world of Gen AI and everything, we're still doing that, right? Firstly, it's important. And secondly, I need it to actually fuel the models. It's a key source of insight and data to actually fuel to train. I need all these data sources to train the models. So absolutely critical. My last one, I guess, to the industry is to not sit back, to not be afraid. I will say, though, it's interesting. Over the last 10 years, we started off the conversation today around what has changed in our industry. And I think what has changed as well, and I see this as positive, I feel like we've become braver. 10 years ago, we were always like sitting back while all these people kind of came in and ate our lunch. First the consultants came and took all the strategic work and charged 10 times more for it. And we're all like deer in headlights, about it, right? Then after that, the digital kind of tech companies came and we were a little bit deer in headlights, but fortunately we created some digital platforms and all that. So that sort of saved us a little bit, but the digital platforms cost 10% of what the other ones cost. So therefore that also devalued the industry. Again, it's like, OMG, what's going on, right? Data came, okay, now CMI organizations and client sites getting carved up. The whole analytics team plugged into the chief IT or digital officer, leaving, as one client company said to me, not mine, the traditional consumer insights people doing qual and quant in another space. Yeah. But I feel with this, so over time, rather than sitting back and watching this happen, I feel like hopefully we've learned our lesson, and now with this topic of Jane, I have noticed us leading more from the front, leaning in more. It started with data. You saw it, client companies, but also agencies. And on Gen AI, I've kind of jumped on it. And what I kind of like is I definitely see more excitement and I see more passion versus fear. Of course, there will be a little bit of fear, right? But I see a desire to want to do it. So I would say, I'm a big believer in disrupting myself and my team before somebody else comes to do it. Not only are we an industry that works on insights, but we're supposed to be predictive and also work on foresight. So if we don't have any foresight about what we actually do in our industry, we should apply some of our principles to ourselves. And how do we stay ahead of the game? How do we lead the way? So you can't fight this. So you can't fight something for me. The thing is, I want to own it. I want to be a part of it. I want to be at the front of it rather than the receiving end. So I'll end off also by saying what I actually say a fair bit in quite a number of forums is people who work in our industry, in the CMI, insights research world, are proverbially always waiting and desiring the seat at the table. Yeah, always. You hear about it, especially in client roles, the seat at the table. Do you have it? Do you not have it? Etc. And what I say is, yes, it's important to have a seat at the table, but I don't hang around waiting for somebody to give me a seat at the table. If it's that's great. I'm going to own it. I'm going to make sure I deliver value so I keep it. Yeah. But you know what? I'm not going to hang around waiting for somebody to invite me to a seat and give me a seat at the table. I want to make my own table. I want to make my own table, and it's going to be such an amazing table that everybody's going to want to come and sit at my table. Yeah? So that's my invitation to our industry is don't wait around. Don't wait around for this invitation, but do it and lead from the front because we just have such an incredible opportunity right now.
Thanks, Elaine. It's really great to get your perspective on how your current trials at Reckitt are working and where you see more opportunities for more integration of AI and data insights. We're really excited to see where Reckitt will continue to adopt and apply new tools to get that consumer closeness that you talked about is so core to what we do and what you do at Reckitt. For our attendees, we're just scratching the surface on day 2 at the Human Advantage 2024. It's all about artificial intelligence today. Many more speakers and panels ahead, so stay tuned and we'll see you in the next session.
So, much of the work that we do at the BVA family is uncovering insights with consumers, with citizens. So we couldn't help but organize this session that you're right in the middle of now, dedicated particularly to the integration of artificial intelligence with the insights industry. So you've already heard from Elaine Rodrigo at Reckitt, and you're going to hear from more clients in the insights function, telling us how they're piloting and utilizing AI in-house and with research partners to evolve the insights industry. And I think you'll find that insights may be the perfect home for AI integration, as Elaine just told us. Soon you're going to hear from some clients from Orange, Renault, and HSBC. But first, for those of you who were not with us yesterday, you need to meet Adrien. This is Adrien Liard. Adrien, good morning. You've been busy.
Yeah.
Catch us up on the sketch notes so far. So let's go back to our session with Olivier Sibony from this morning.
Yeah, it was an amazing session. Olivier said that we all love robots. I certainly do, so I do a lot of them. Contributing to strategic decision making. So here we have our little friend the robot playing a game of chess with those leaders. They can certainly help with decision making. We also learned a lot about the types of error we can make, the biased one.
Is it properly biased, or is there just noise that's creating some scattershot decisions? Yeah.
And the fact that we have much more tolerance for human error, right? We expect AI to be somewhat perfect.
Yeah.
I really love that part about machine learning, making mistakes that look a lot more human.
Yeah.
And I learned that new word, confabulation.
There you go.
And so, it's probably not right. They're just as stupid as we are.
Yeah.
Should we never trust a LM? Maybe. But one thing is sure, algorithm outperform us because we are so noisy.
Because we are so noisy.
Doing all over the place.
Exactly.
And that.
Better. There we go.
You can
Yeah.
And that question, should we remain in control? So we have this guy with the remote control, but the robot is asking, how good are you really?
Yeah.
Maybe we're not.
Great.
Because they are making mistakes for sure, but
if it's fewer mistakes, is that enough?
It's
yeah.
okay, right? And it's pretty close. It's pretty accurate, our friend the robot. And in the end, they just reflect own biases. So we have these robots looking at this person and really they all have biases, right?
How about this last session with Elaine Rodrigo from Reckitt and with Patrick Young?
Yeah, we learned a lot about... For me?
Again.
That's a lot of mic. I'm testing all of them. So we entered that area of data.
Yep.
Exciting, right? With a lot more data sources, but human is still at the center, right?
Sure, right.
Exactly like we heard yesterday, really. And several parts have proven more difficult than expected, right? The personalization one. But one area has really took off, content and asset creation. So now my friend the robot is becoming an artist. He's being a colleague of mine now.
Yeah.
The good news for all the inside people, there are a lot of opportunity, and we are not starting from zero, right?
We have a lot of human insights. We have a lot of data. How do we leverage that data to make and uncover better insights?
Yeah, and we learned that only 10% of it is technology. So it's passing the brick, change management, right?
Yeah.
Because in the end, it is all about how you put it together, and you need to start where you have proprietary data, competitive advantage. Yeah, that was two amazing sessions, right?
How you put it together. Thanks, Adrien. We'll check in with you later. I think it's time to open up our first roundtable of the day. Emily,
It is.
take it away.
Yeah, so we are moving to the next roundtable around the impact of the insights, the impact of the AI, in the insights industry. So for that, we have our own Stéphane Marcel, our Chief Growth Officer here at the BVA family. He's also the president of the Commission Syntec des Études, and he has an extensive career. As such, Stéphane came and invited some really interesting insights clients, and we will be listening to this great roundtable about how AI can revolutionize the insights industry. To you, Stéphane.
See you there.
Hi everyone, happy to be here with you. Thank you to be here with us this morning. We've heard a lot since the beginning of the journey, I would say, and with Olivier Sibony and Elaine Rodrigo keynotes, some important point of view which forms challenges for us as an industry, and especially some really important things that I'm going to take as a takeaway for our conversation. One is about decision, because everything at the end is about decision, and the benefit of what AI can bring is linked to the question of the decision. The importance of the quality, nature, quantity of the data, which is so important when we input any kind of model. The training, the skills that us as an industry, client side and agency side would have to develop. But most importantly, the importance of the context, which is so important for us, being behavioral scientists. And Elaine talked about her intensive excitement, experience when it comes to Gen AI in a specific context, which is the Reckitt Benckiser and FMCG sector. Today, we are lucky to have with us people which are really symptomatic of other industry, with Alain from Renault, Isabelle from Orange, and Joshua, which is from HSBC. And I think that it is important that they introduce themselves rapidly in order to understand their context and to what extent it has an importance when they consider AI. Hélène, Alain. Isabelle, sorry.
Hello, everybody. I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you for inviting us. And so I'm in charge of global research and insights at Orange Innovation. Our team is in charge to guide with insights and deliver insights to teams to deliver meaningful innovation at the service of BUs, business units, and countries. So in that context, we provide insights particularly on usages, attitudes, societal evolutions in order to guide innovation choices.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. So I'm Alain Klapisz. I lead customer and market intelligence at Renault Group worldwide. My job consists in fueling Renault Group strategies alongside product planning, product development, marketing, sales, quality, and engineering. Prior to this, I spent 26 years in the food industry, leading and holding local, regional, and global positions, and managing, leading CMI transformation.
Thank you. We also have Joshua online that can introduce himself. Or not?
Josh.
Josh.
Yes, I think you can all hear me okay. So hello everyone, I'm Josh. I work at HSBC. For those who don't know HSBC, it's a leading international bank, and I head up our brand reputation insight team. And within that, we really do two things. One, unsurprisingly, is look after insights that relate to our brand and reputation, but also we work horizontally across the organization. So like many large organizations, they work in a matrix. So we touch upon insight requirements that cover multiple parts of the bank.
Thank you, Josh. Before we go into concrete conversation on our big topic of this morning conversation, which is how can artificial intelligence revolutionize our world, we're going to ask through a quick poll our audience what they think about it. And the question should appear on your screen. We take a few seconds to see your answer. How can AI revolutionize the world of insights? So we have an audience. We are super considering the samples and the survey, which is combining either market research, CEOs, marketers, human resources function. So it's not only the point of view of the insights function. So are the votes closed? So, for the moment, I cannot see the figures, but they're going to come. %. Okay, So this is the force with instant feedback management. 83% think that it's going to revolutionize our world. So it is setting up the debate and, of course, the importance of the question. So now, of course, I'm going to ask each one of you to react on this and to give your point of view on the facts that it is going or not to revolutionize our world. And we will start with Isabelle.
Well, that's very interesting to have the poll, because I must say I'm totally prepared to say I don't think it's a revolution, and I really trust we are in a big evolution. It has major impact. We've already seen on productivity, efficiency, obviously, and I think on agency side they are really. It's already really demonstrated. But what happens with generative AI particularly is the speed in which it was introduced and it become accessible to mass markets, but also to companies. So it has pushed everybody to experiment, to test really much quicker than other innovations. But it comes also with risks and with, let's say, ethics problems, with quality problem in which we are particularly impacted as researchers. And of course, it needs upskilling and a lot of experimentation. And that's why I think that's really part of all evolution that we've known in the market research industry, which is well known to have been adopting many changes recently.
Thank you. Josh, what do you think about this?
Yeah, it's a great question, and again, really strong results. But I think I have a very similar view, whereby I think it will complement, not necessarily revolutionize. I think for two reasons, and Elaine talked a little about this in her session. If we think about AI, it's already been here. It's been here for a while. I think a lot of us have been using it in a certain way. But I also think if we think about the human emotion that happens in research, and particularly trying to get beyond those rational answers that typically happen in research, I think humans have evolved over, kind of thousands, millions of years to try and understand that human emotion as almost a survival instinct. So I think that piece is never going to go away. So I see AI definitely complementing as opposed to replacing or revolutionizing.
So slightly different point of view from, I would say, the audience, even if the audience had only a figure to share. So Alain, now, what do you think?
Well, I would say yes and no. Just a little bit of background. I operate in an industry that is being pretty much disrupted by many elements. Technology, by new entrants in the industry, by regulation, and by sustainability. These are discontinuity that pose a very strong demand on the value that we create. In other words, there's not been as much pressure on the attractiveness, on the competitiveness, and on the speed at which we develop value propositions. This means that us as CMI, our role and our mission will not radically change. Our role is to nurture value with insights. Our role is to contribute to the strategies with insights. Our role is to feed the strategies with insight, foresight, trends, hindsight. And this will not change, particularly at the light of the incremental value that we need to develop. This isn't changed. What is changed is the operational mode, because this background raises three major challenges. Number one, we've got to make trends way more pivotal in our business models. We've got to make them way more impactful. And that's the first element that's going to change. Number two, the pace at which we're going to develop ideas, concepts, value propositions, experience will be, let's say, accelerated pretty much. Number three, we will learn, and we need to learn way faster than ever. And yes, in this field, this is a massive discontinuity that we as CMI have to lead.
Thank you. Before we deep into the real conversation, I would say, which is about what is the area where AI can improve what we currently do. We've talked about speeds, quality, etc. I've done my job. I've used my super companion, ChatGPT, and I've asked to him to what extent he would answer. Simple prompt. Okay, we know that prompts are so important. You can read on the screen now what is the answer that I'm gonna rapidly summarize, because you can read it. And when we ask ChatGPT through this kind of prompt, the same question as we are discussing since the beginning of the session, the answer is that AI has the potential to revolutionize in different ways the data analytics, deeper insight, large amount of data that can be identified with behavior patterns that human couldn't identify. We talk about personalization, predictive analytics, and natural language processing. Overall, an idea that AI can help businesses make data-driven decisions quickly and efficiently. So it's either a stimulus for our conversation and also for the audience, a way to compare what is the general answer for Gen AI and your answer. So now we can go into this big question on the where do you think that mainly AI is, I would say, a game changer, or can bring not value, but added value to what we currently do. And we're going to start with Alain, based on his experience, to explain his point of view.
Well, back to my previous point, I think, again, there's three main areas where it's going to have a strong impact. Number one, the pace of change is such that we have to feed massively the trends. And that's the first area of discontinuity. We've got to make trends way more impactful, influential. I can't think about the number of people who are working, on newsletters, on trends, either in silos or with overlaps, whatever, but we cannot afford to do this. What is at stake there is to move the center of gravity of CMI from people working on the what's, many people working on the and sometimes on the how, to people working on the so what's. In other words, with predictive AI, we're going to take advantage of one central pipe that gives us, on a regular basis and in real time, all the disrupting trends that will impact the value proposition. Stefan, I took advantage of a conversation I had with the game industry. And it's incredible to see to what extent the game industry taking advantage of the discontinuity leveraged by Nintendo or Apple just in the products that they create. I like to be able to embed this in the organization in a nutshell. And that's the first element. Second element is, once we've drawn and understood and absorbed all the discontinuities and all the trends, the pace at which we will develop value propositions will be enhanced. With chatbots, with generative AI, we're able to develop concepts, to test them with customers, to interact in agile loops with customers in a pace that is unprecedented. And this is really required by the industry. Number three, we've got to learn fast. The more discontinuities we introduce in the model, the faster we need to learn. And it has to do mainly with two things. One, we've got to be better at knowledge management databases, like and hindsight, leveraged by artificial intelligence, and implement them. Second, we will leverage the power of data, of car data, to learn from experience, to draw behavioral insights. And if we do this, I think we are in a situation to drive it an advantage. But we have to admit that it takes time, that it's a long journey, to be very humble, and obviously to drive a massive change in this perspective.
Thank you. Isabelle, of course, you've already experienced some good pieces of, I would say, research using or enhancing research through AI, and especially Gen AI. Perhaps you're going to talk about this, but also you can give a broader perspective, because you're also a member of the French National Insight Association, which is the so-called Insight Hub. So perhaps you can share either your experience and also what is the point of view that some colleagues from the industry have on the same topic, on the where and the how can AI impact our role.
Thank you, Stefan. Yes, I'd like to take a much more, let's say, probably practical approach than what Alain says, which is very strategic and very thorough. At Orange, the visibility of the impact of AI, and particularly generative AI, is huge in many functions, not that much in marketing today, because the majority of investments are where there is a return on investment, which is quite important on operational aspects regarding our network, or telecommunication networks, and digital services. Which means, on the other hand, we had the chance within Orange to get access very quickly to a private secure environment called Dino2, and it has pushed all employees and teams to experiment very quickly, and within the marketing department to play and it created excitement and even a bit of competition to try and identify use cases. So it has some benefits, but also some risks, and particularly a very natural access to what so-called insights, but just taken out from the models as they are, without framework, without data input, and so on. So the direct impact for insights team is, I think, the first, which always existed in our profession, is reinforcing and expanding our role of quality keeper, which means that with this tendency to play and experiment a lot with generative AI, of course, there are some risks, and particularly some of our colleagues started to create their own persona with, fueled by generative AI and play with it as if they represented customers. That's where we were called and challenged to say, well, can't we question this and maybe find another way, a better way to use that? So we saw a great opportunity to work with an existing segmentation we had recently delivered on CSR sensitivities. In parallel, the market research and insights industry has been really very active and making some buzz around the world of persona bots. So that's how we decided to develop interactive persona bots to represent each of these CSR segments. We've been able to work with our partner Ipsos, and it reassured a lot and allowed us to experiment all the approach to selected sources, test, validation of the approach, and finally delivered really powerful persona bots, which give a way to make this segmentation attractive and much more operational, meaning the marketeers can be directly involved in a conversation with the different segments, and therefore on a regular basis and with an instant feedback play with their ideas, incorporate sustainability, which is a bigger challenge, into ideas of initiatives and offers and propositions. And currently it is being used in Orange France in a very operational way in a regular, a team which has regular meeting aiming to develop low carbon offers. So what's the impact that I draw as a conclusion for the Insights team? It's this experience showed how much the visibility of insights and the visibility of our role is incredibly augmented thanks to generative AI, because it means insights become accessible, playful, and really in a continuous way. And I see many other applications that we are either experimenting or that we've heard about and identifying in our roadmap, of this direct access to knowledge and constantly refresh, having the capacity to ask in natural language. That's really a game changer, I think, for Insights team.
Okay.
So sorry, I've been a bit long, but
no problem. We have time. So what I understand here is that you put the emphasis on the benefit of AI when it comes to, I would call it insight socialization or democratization, which is part of the impact, or which is part of the challenge. But if I go back to your points, do you think that in a way what you've experienced through this research, which is a big piece of research, a big amount of data, international research, as far as I know, do you think that it has brought to the table, to the decision table, or to the innovation process, something that is specific and new, apart from the fact that, of course, we can play with the data, with the chatbot, which is a bit of gamification with the insights. Finally, because you did previously the research, did you discover things, insight, I would say, that you shouldn't have or couldn't have discovered without this AI enhancement?
I think it's not about discovering insights. It's about making them more concrete and really the possibility to fine-tune ideas, to think with the real words. It sounds like real customers representing a segment. It's just having if I play back the words of my colleague who works in this design thinking approach, it's always a dream to have customer in the room.
Yeah.
Here you don't have the customer, but you have the bot representing the customer, and compared to a real customer, it's much easier because you don't have all the kind of context, let's say the attitudes and all the kind of things, plus the aspect of timing and cost and practicalities. The bot is always here and he always answers. It never gets tired.
Okay, which means that if I understand well, here the main benefit is increasing the usage of the data, and especially this kind of data that we know sometimes is a bit boring or huge, persona, papers, large PowerPoint. And here the focus, what is interesting to me, is much more on the end of the value chain compared to the beginning of the value chain, where a lot of the industry is investing and focusing. And especially, and we're going to talk with Joshua on his experience and point of view. We're going to talk a bit of synthetic data because it is a big topic in the industry. So Joshua, I'm moving here. I should not. Joshua, based on your experience, where do you think that that AI can impact or add value or increase the benefit of what we do all along the value chain? And I know that you have a point of view on all the give of the perspective compared to what Isabelle and Alain gave to us.
Oh, thank you. And then everyone's made some really great points. And it's really worth just starting with some context in terms of the operating model that we work in. So we work in a financial services industry, which means it's highly regulated. So we have done work in AI. We are doing work in generative AI. But one of the things we have to do it is in a very safe way, just to ensure that we are adhering to the internal controls and policies and processes we have around the subject of AI. And the policies we have internally around AI span way beyond insight and marketing. They're kind of bank wide. But for us, we have done some pilots, particularly around the use of ChatGPT and particularly around storytelling and how we use generative AI to tell better stories through the insight that we generate. But I think if I think about the opportunities that it creates, they almost fall into two camps. Some that are functional, but also some that are strategic. And if I think about some of those really functional benefits, I think we've covered some of them today. But that's about how do we make the experience better for customers who are participating in the studies, or even just the analysis that's done at the back end of those. So we've talked about chatbots, for example. There are things that happen within studies right now, like gamifications to make the surveys better for consumers. So again, there's things like that can just give you a better experience. And I think one of the real benefits that Gen AI will give us is just quickness of data. And if I think the amount of times that many of us have been in a room where we talk to a stakeholder about a project and we talk about timelines, you end up saying, oh, it may take weeks or months to complete a study. Now we may be able to get insight within days or even hours. So I think that time piece that also has a cost implication, a positive cost implication, becomes really important. And that has some positive consequences that become more strategic. If the cost of doing research, albeit through AI, is far quicker and cheaper, then the amount of insight being done, albeit by a human or AI, becomes massively increased. So you can start to see how every project will start with a view around customer insight or have a customer insight element to it, because budget just becomes out of the equation or less of a factor. And I think the other thing that you'll start to get is maybe parts of the organization in HSBC where you've got insight teams with perhaps smaller budgets, or even if you take it outside of HSBC, just organizations that have relatively small budgets or insight teams, they'll be able to do far more insight than they had done previously, because obviously the cost of doing research goes down. So the use of insight is far more widespread potentially than it ever has before. And I think the other thing that you talked about was around synthetic data. And this is something very polarizing, I think, in the industry. But for us, we have some really hard to reach audiences that we want to try and understand, particularly kind of high net worth individuals on the retail side and kind of CFOs in large corporate organizations. So there's a piece where whenever we do studies, we typically have very low base sizes. There's potentially an opportunity here to say, well, how can we start to improve our understanding of some of these audiences through the use of synthetic data?
Thank you. And to summarize, Joshua, if you would say that if you had to invest in your context in one particular area where AI can bring more, what is it? And can you explain why to us?
That's a brilliant question. So for me, it would be about the inputs into the data. And I think like many organizations, if I think about the complexities of HSBC, we've got multiple lines of business, multiple product lines. The challenge we have and Elaine talked about this in her presentation, is around consistency of data and it all being in one location. But I think if we are able to invest money in getting the tools right and the solutions right and the consistency right, the data comparability and the analysis that we do just becomes completely unlocked. So for me, I would spend the time investing to make sure the quality of the data going into the AI is as optimal as possible to ensure we get the right outcomes.
Thank you. Quality of the data is really important because I would say that you have to have the good ingredients to cook well. And I can take just right now, before the end of the conversation, where we will have a Q&A, some questions that are connected to this. And especially as Joshua introduced the big question of synthetic data or panel or audiences, whatever we call it, I would like to have your view on this. Where you are, if you are somewhere, do you have a point of view? Do you have experiences that you could share? It was not prepared, so it's part of the live.
Right, so we have to be, I think again, we have to be very humble in this field. We're at the beginning of a journey. It takes proofs of concept. We've got to plan adequately, sequentially, find just the one use cases that we can experiment, draw learnings and roll out. This is where we are, more at the planning stage than at the stage of maturity.
Okay. Isabelle?
We're very much aligned, and even not at the planning stage. We are, just coming back from the ESOMAR conference. We've seen so many papers with relatively diverse feedback on synthetic data. So we've come across in our insights team and think, well, first, do we have really potential strong impact of working on a pilot on all type of activity? We don't have lots of consistent data. Of course, we've got the needs to expand samples, so that's really something we're looking at. But I don't think for the moment it's mature enough. So we are really looking carefully, and especially those who are in charge of big trackers may have more pressure and more opportunity to test.
Yeah. Thank you. For those interested here in the room or in the audience, we will have a specific session on this in the afternoon to share our point of view and experiences. So I'm not going to go into too many details now, but for those who are interested, I invited you to join this session. Now we're going to move into another area. We've started to share some experiences that yourself or your teams, the same for Joshua, have already had in different, I would say, areas, kind of research or business topic to be solved, I would say. I'm not going to ask you to detail too much all the experiences, but take this opportunity perhaps to set up what are the challenges for us, agencies, for you as insight leaders, based on the experience, based on your experience. What are, I would say, the main takeaway that you could share with the audience? I can start with Joshua that time.
The main takeaways. So for me, there's probably a couple of takeaways, which is that the main one being that whenever we use AI and synthetic data, it has to be in addition to traditional and primary research, as opposed to instead of. And that's because of all the things we just spoke about before, some of the kind of biases, some of the limitations, and also I think credibility is another one. I think having to explain data that's in a black box through generative AI becomes very complicated. And I think if we were to say Gen AI or synthetic data being used, for example, in senior management scorecards for enumeration purposes, I think the question of credibility and being able to validate it and understand it truly is just not at that level of maturity right now. So for me, the key learning is how do we use this to complement what we do instead of replace what we do.
Thank you, Joshua. And Isabelle now?
Yeah, I very much align with Joshua's feedback, and I'll go beyond saying, well, there is, at least in our personal experience, I think there are clear boundaries, and who else than insights people are better to guide when it, there is always a lack of emotion. We talked about that. Is there the fine representation of human intelligence? Not always, because actually, for example, in the experience of personal bots, the bots are as good as the data they've been inputted in, which means there are boundaries on the scope of questions we can ask. They are very much been trained on sustainability. If you ask something else, they the answer always, but in a biased way. And finally, in terms of advice and thought for our community of insights people around the world, and particularly in this community we have in France, we are really we want to intensify the sharing experiences, and I think with our partners it has already started with agencies, with some colleagues from other industries. That's a very important point because the industry has really a role to play there in the whole ecosystem.
Thank you, Isabelle. Alain?
Yeah, I agree with you, Isabelle. Actually, I think there's something insightful in the answer that artificial intelligence gave to your question. Is AI going to revolutionize insights? And the answer artificial intelligence gives is just something around the systems, around the pipes, right? Yes, it says yes, data analysis, personalization, predictive analytics, but this is just a very small part of the change that we have to lead. The massive change is about embarking people and the system in this journey. It's a human transformation that we're talking about. It's a managerial transformation we're talking about. It's about changing jobs, changing perspective. So to do this, I think that's most of the part that needs to be taken into account, and that's why I think we need to be very cautious. Get there step by step with an adequate planning, with proof of concepts before scalability. And the human aspect, it's called the human advantage, the human aspect of it all is absolutely pivotal.
Okay.
It's up to us to lead change, but it's a human element before being just something technical about technology.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for those really important and great takeaway. It's also linked with what Elaine Rodrigo was saying and sharing this morning, and also Olivier Sibony, which has challenged us in terms of how we do validate the model. Everything is about experimentation and scaling. And so before we close the session, I'm gonna take with you some really important questions which are linked to this, and especially with the question that you've raised, Alain, on human at the end. Because at the end, it is also a question of change management for us as human, and also about decision at the end. And one question which comes in Olivier's session and which is already here is about the skills. Because we are talking a lot about, of course, the data, the tech, etc., or the science fiction, but we are talking about human. So in terms of the skills challenges for you, your teams, or perhaps your internal clients, it's a large question. What do you think it is important to change or to add to what we do or to what we are? And I'm going to talk first with the inside function, not the agency side.
Well, I think it just reinforces a trend that we've seen so important in Insights role in client side, which is all the aspect of soft skills to allow our influence to become much bigger. The right thing with artificial intelligence is that I think it reinforces what I said about guardian of quality, which means with all the validation steps of models, of data, and so on, and Elaine talked a lot about that, which makes us almost even more visible within the industry. What needs to be visible is not only how we deal with the data and the quality, it's also how the messages how much we can, let's say, draw conclusions and help guide decisions with the outcome of the AI and the human intelligence. That's really how I see this is really expanding a trend.
Okay, thank you. Alain, do you want to add some?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a massive opportunity to upskill the insight function. Over the last, let's say, 15 years, it was very much about, shifting from expertise to insightful, influential, inquisitive storytellers, influencers, and putting the insights at the heart of what we do. This is not going to be changed massively. We have to confirm this and to accelerate it. What artificial intelligence gives us the opportunity to do is to do it with the new generation of insights, with the new generation of data. So we have to build, of course, the hard skills that are necessary to make it happen, and that's one aspect. But the second element is by sort of empowering a little bit more and sticking to artificial intelligence, the room we leave for co-creation, for co-building, for interpretation, for adaptation, and basically for transformation of the insights into relevant strategies and concepts is way bigger. So these are the two aspects. The hard skills, of course, in connection with the manipulation of the usage of artificial intelligence, and the creativity that goes with this.
Okay. Based on this, and you can answer, or Joshua can take it, apart from training more, which is an important way to move forward or to change, do you think that we have to add, through internal, I would say, movement or external recruitment, new skills, capabilities, profile, in order to deliver what we have to deliver? Or do you think that the insight function can change in itself, of course, with a bit of a support? So do we need to train to be trained, or do we need to infuse in our organization different kind of people based on especially what you've said regarding creativity? I wouldn't say that market research is not creative, but if it is the plan, do you think that we can take it as a challenge?
I would say it's a bit of a mix, in a way that there is no other way than other possibility than just upskill the managers. We have to grow with this. And by the way, the value we bring to the business is not just to the business. It's not just to the customer. It's not just to the shareholder. It's also bringing value to the people who work at CMI, because they're going to upskill and to gain capabilities. Now, for the ones that are very specific, like creativity and everything, of course we have to find the right mix. But there's no other way than upskill and gain these capabilities if we want to be AI fluent.
Okay, Isabelle?
I totally agree. I would just add one point, which is about, let's say, the very strong DNA of Insights people to be transparent and capable to explain what's in the outcome, the research they produce. That's what Joshua said as well. I think we have to accept, and that's really a big shift we went through in my team since the arrival of generative AI, is like, but can I trust something? I don't know how it happens. It's all probabilities. And this shift is a very important point, because researchers like to be able to explain, even if they don't know all the science behind the statistics and so on. At least they're able to be trust, and to be able to build our trust on the AI models. I think there is no way as to experiment, but also get some level of new skills.
Thank you. Before we close, perhaps a last question, and we're going to ask Joshua if he wants to take it. Another question which is important, we've talked about the context, of course, the industry, your role, the data, the nature, the quality, which is a bit different in different contexts. And there is a question which is important about the fact that sometimes you have to deal with resistance and skepticism. Some difficulties. Yeah. In your environment, and especially with decision maker, or the reverse way can help. So how can we help on this, and how do we deal, or can we deal with this? Sorry, Joshua, it was a long, complex.
No, it's a great question, and I think one that is so topical, because so many stakeholders right now want to use AI and synthetic data because it's new and exciting. But as we talked before, there are some kind of limitations to it. So we have to get that balance right. And I think for me, it's about starting small. And Alain mentioned this before, having very small but defined proof of concepts to test it. And then once we are sure it's credible, and then start to scale up. Because I think if you just go straight to the extreme of just kind of switching off your human insight and going straight with AI or generative AI or synthetic data, you'll run into so many problems. And as we talked about before, there are so many soft skills that insight professionals have to tell a story, but that can come undermined very quickly if we don't understand the nuts and bolts of how this insight is generated. So for me to kind of get over that kind of resistance and skepticism, I think for me it's skepticism more than resistance. I think actually a lot of stakeholders want to try it, and it's perhaps even maybe us in the insight world that are trying to tell them to slow it down a little bit so we can better understand the implications, the accuracies, and the considerations. So for me, it's about starting small and slowly scaling up on the right use cases.
Thank you. Now it's time to close, perhaps. Thank you very much. I hope it was for yourself and for the audience an insightful and an inspiring session. a lot of lessons to take away, thanks to you and your expertise, and some challenges that are going to be also discussed in the rest of the session that come. Thank you very much. Let's keep the conversation going on through the chat or through individual connection. Thank you, Isabelle. Thank you, Joshua. Thank you, Alain.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Great. So thank you so much for that panel, Stefan. As a former insights guy myself, I think that's just so interesting to hear about how the insights function is where the integration of AI can really find its home. And I love what Joshua said, that it's about both and, right? We're not replacing traditional research methodologies. We're not replacing classical methods, but instead we are using AI-infused solutions to give us better insights and using that point of comparison between AI solutions and more traditional research methods and digital methods. I like what Isabelle said there about, it's kind of in the DNA of insights people that we are both curious and maybe cautious, maybe a little bit careful. And I think, Joshua also kind of doubled down on that skepticism is good. That's another part of the insights DNA. We don't just take what citizens or consumers tell us at face value. And that skepticism that makes us good at insights is also the skepticism that we bring to AI. We're open to innovation. We're open to new forms of finding data and analyzing data. But we want to make sure that what we tell clients is accurate, it is predictive, it is helpful. And I like the idea what Alain was saying, that it's really about upskilling, right? I think insights people are always open and quite hungry for new ways, but so it's that balance of upskilling with that skepticism. I want to check in with Adrien very quickly. I know, Adrien, we just checked in with you, but anything from that last session that we should have a look at?
Yeah, sure. It was, again, really packed with insight. I hope I was able to capture a lot more. So we talk about that revolution, but is it a revolution or an evolution? One thing is sure, that may come with risk and maybe some fear. So we have this guy running away from that giant robot, who is human-driven, by the way. That needs to make trends more impactful. So I picture that guy riding the wave, right? Because one thing is sure, we must learn faster, and data knowledge management database is clearly part of it. So it's jumping from that old book to those knowledge management database.
Exactly, yeah.
We talk a lot about quality, right? So I have here this guardian of quality. I think the data is safe here.
And I love this about making insights accessible.
Right? I love that part.
That it can feel that AI might pull the joy out of things, but actually maybe it is the trick to uncovering more, to making insights more accessible, more usable, more, data tables, dashboards that can really make things exciting.
This is exactly what I try to represent here. So I imagine some video game where you can play with the persona and everything to make it more fun, right? And you can also tell better stories though. Now our little friend the robot is a storyteller. He can do everything, right? And I think that's a good last word for that session. In addition, not instead of. It's really about
stages, right? It's both and, not either or. We're not looking at AI to replace the insights function. We're looking at where AI solutions can partner with other research methodologies and solutions that people are used to. And I love that, just to go back to the storytelling. At the end of the day, the best researchers, the best insights people are taking that data, taking those insights and telling a story that makes it useful for the client organization. Thanks, Adrien. We'll check in with you later.